All right, so we're sharing. Ooh, sorry. Hi everybody. This is really weird. I don't have anything else. We're sharing our animal behavior lab and what we got. So who would like to start? This is my class. They're all very excited.
Okay.
Who would like to start?
Oh, are we starting one here?
Sure.
Okay. So we did pH and we used ammonium and then lemon juice, and we found that over time they preferred ammonium.
Okay, so could you give us numbers of
Oh, yeah.
that? Like what type of, was it 10-0 by the end?
By the end it was 9-1.
By the end it was 9-1, showing a preference for more base than acidity. Next group.
We tested what types of surfaces the isopods prefer. So we did dirt, mud, sand, and gravel. And we found that over time they prefer mud, which makes sense because that's their natural habitat, but they also really liked the sand.
Sand. And out of those were, you had dirt, gravel, sand, mud. Were all of them wet minus the gravel?
No, just the mud was wet.
Just the mud was wet. Okay, good to know. Next group.
Me and David can go. We also did surface. We did just bark and gravel, and we found that they didn't really care. Surprisingly, we thought bark, they would prefer that, but no, they didn't really care between those two.
There was no preference, so null hypothesis more correct. Okay, next.
We did food, and we put a piece of beef on one side and apple on the other side, and we also found that it didn't really care. Like there were times where there were more of them in the middle than on either side.
Okay.
We
Okay.
tested using another living organism. We used a earthworm. We had the worm on one side and then put the isopods on the other, and then
What on? Just nothing on the other.
yeah, nothing
Okay.
on the other. And they liked the worms more than the other because at one point all 16 were on the same side.
Okay, so showing a preference by the end, were they split or most on the worm side still?
They were still on the worm side.
Okay.
We did loud noises. We put them all on one side with a loud speaker, and we played music. And by the end, it was 7 with a loud noise and 3 on the other side without the loud noise.
So do you think that it was that they preferred Katy Perry or the loud noises and vibration? It was Katy Perry. That's what I think. I thought so too. Okay.
Okay, we tested light versus dark. So we covered up one side with black construction paper on the bottom and top, and then we put the other side under a light, and they preferred the light side. No, dark side. Dark side. It was 9-1 at the end. They preferred the dark side.
Okay, preferred the dark side by the end. Hopefully we're correlating to somebody else's labs, correct?
We tested temperature with one side of the petri dish being like under a heat lamp and the other had an ice pack underneath. And right away the preference was the cold side.
Okay, and then
stuck the whole entire time.
And it just stayed kind of
Yeah.
cold. Okay.
We tested scent, so we used 2 different kinds of lotion to see which one they would prefer, either like a sweeter smell or a more woodsy smell, and they overall preferred the sweeter smell, finishing 9-1.
Okay, good to know. They prefer sweet smells over woodsy.
Yeah. Like
Okay.
more-
We tested to see if the bugs liked a certain type of music, so we played Beethoven and Drake, and by the end, we didn't really see a preference.
Oh, they didn't. Did they like both? Just like checking both out?
Kind of went over and went back, and they were mostly trying to escape, so.
Oh yeah, that's right. They're
Hard to
trying to
tell.
escape your box. Okay. Got it. All right. So I think everybody can correlate to somebody else's experiment here. Ooh, just gonna get motion sickness. Sorry. We're gonna try and get so she can see the front. All right. So now when we're looking at this, that should be in your, that should be good. Okay. That should be in your journals for sure. We have a couple more labs that will go in there, and then we'll talk about some debates. But we need to finish our notes, which hopefully you should have already taken on animal behaviors. It's really just we have to talk about social behaviors.
Oh, what are we going to talk about in the intro table for this?
We'll do that too. Okay. Okay, get out your notes. behaviors. We had two words, and we had taxis and kinesis. What are the difference between those words as far as movements of animals? Yes, so taxis are talking about directly toward or away from whatever stimulus we're talking about. And then kinesis is more, it's trying to cover surface area a little bit more. Did anybody in their isopod lab notice any differences in movements? Like was one more direct to one, or one, like, if I was gonna guess, I'd say Riley sounded a little bit more kinesis, kind of in and out and around and trying to escape. Anybody see more like direct, and you guys probably the same because you didn't have really anything that you saw, but did you see a direct movement?
Yeah, so in our first feeling wet versus dry, they weren't moving very much. They would just like kind of hide underneath the wet cloth. And in our second one, they were moving all the time. They were in the sweeter scenty dish, but they were moving around and they were constantly.
Okay, in that one, they were constantly moving around. Okay.
Some people like flipped over on their backs.
Oh yeah, a lot
That was,
of,
like,
yeah, a lot of flipping over on backs, maybe a lot of mating that was going on. Interesting behaviors that we could have written for observations, right, in our lab journals for sure. Okay, last, when we're talking about social behaviors, when we're looking at these social behaviors or different social behaviors, we're gonna look at all those different social behaviors. When we're talking about animal behavior, the most important thing that you should probably have in your notes are always examples. Okay, so we'll talk about lots of examples of these different types of social behaviors, and you might want to have those just to know those when your test is coming up. So, first off, language. We saw this in a video at the beginning where you had your journal where you were writing about those different things those animals were doing, and we saw some bees moving around in a circle. And when we're looking at that, that is a way that they communicate. It's called the waggle dance. So when we're talking communication, obviously a huge way that we communicate is through actual words. We also communicate through our body, and I believe my husband does a whole thing about body language and what we project out, right? But animals use different types of communication, and the bees use the waggle dance. So what we saw in that video was a bee that had gone out and found a food source, and then came back to the hive, and then was doing these circle patterns, and then would wiggle its butt. And really that's meaning where the food source that bee found from the beehive, at whatever angle the bee was wiggling its butt from the sun. And that tells them degree angle from the sun that they should fly in order to find a food source. So when we're talking about the waggle dance is communication for finding a food source. Now there's other types, and we talked about both innate and learned behaviors. When we're talking innate is what?
It's like something you're born doing, it's like instinctual.
Something that you're born with. Did you say it? I didn't hear you. Sorry. Okay. When we're looking at this, bird songs are both of those together. So actually this is something you definitely want to know, okay? And they talk about it in your book, so when you read your textbook and the animal behavior chapter, they will talk about this. But songs are both innate and learned. So this is something you want to know. I think we talked about this as well already. Is that there's a critical learning period for learning the correct song. So innate, they come out, they are able to make sounds, right? But for each species of bird, they have a very specific mating song, right? And that's the learned part. So if those birds don't find it within that critical learning period, and I forget it, I'm bad with numbers, but like a certain number of days, then they're never gonna learn it. Once those amount of days or that critical learning period has passed, those birds are not gonna learn it anymore. And then probably what's not gonna happen? They're not gonna mate, they're not gonna reproduce. Biologically speaking, what is meaning of life? Passing on our genes and reproducing. We're looking at insect songs. we looked at this as a possible speciation area, right? Because these are both innate and genetically controlled. So insect songs, they usually have these patterns of buzzes or whatever that they're sounds that they're making that are very specific for the species or mates they are trying to attract. And the different genetically controlled buzz patterns are different among these insects, and those mates are only going to go to the pattern that they like. Okay, pheromones. We're looking at pheromones. These are chemical signals. And that's what I would really know. These are really looking at the only chemical signals for communication that we're seeing. But they're used for different things, and that's really what you want to know. Is that when we're looking at pheromones, sure they are chemical signals. These chemical signals can be these alarm pheromones, so like this picture of these minnows. Once there's an alarm, the alarm or alarm pheromone is given off. It's saying there's danger that's up here, and they all go and they huddle away from where that danger is. But pheromones can also be to attract mates. So we're talking sex pheromones, and then also look at this on the next page, which there's pheromones, which are called allones, and those are like with this spider in this bottom picture, is that these spiders use the same pheromones as these moths to attract moths in order to trap them as prey and then eventually kill them and eat them. So when we're talking allones, same thing, pheromones, a chemical signal, but eventually we're trying to harm the other living thing. Other examples, mosquitoes use carbon dioxide as a trigger in order to find blood supply. And these ones, different animals use them as territorial signals, and this is just another, the lioness actually uses pheromones and body movements in order to attract a mate. And then, actually, I just saw this on something this weekend. Human sex pheromones. You can buy this like perfume that's supposed to make you desirable to the opposite sex so that they can't help but just be attracted to you. Honestly, I just saw this. I don't think it'd be on a commercial, but I don't know what I saw. But you can buy that and you can test that out if you would like to. Just nice. Okay. Continuing on. So when we're looking at learned behaviors and social learning, a big thing with social learning is that it can create culture. So when we're looking at social learning, learning by observing others. When you're looking at culture, then we're talking about this is a definable characteristic behavior that this group has of whatever species that this group doesn't have. So we're creating this culture within this group compared to this group. So I don't know who, like this could be a thing. It's kind of like, what are those called? Traditions, right? If we're looking at traditions, we could say that's a thing that your family builds. Does anybody get the pajamas on Christmas Eve for their family? Okay. That's a thing that some people do, and that's going to separate Brielle's family from Henry's family, who does not do the pajamas thing, right? Kind of the same thing. So it's like chimps that are going to get insects with sticks. That's a culture for those groups of chimp. That's creating a culture group. Those are the stick hunting chimps versus using long grasses and whatever else in order to get insects to eat. Does that make sense? So it's creating a distinction between these different groups, and they use this and these other people use this. Brielle wears the pajamas. I know a lot of people that do that as well. Did you get some cool ones this year? Okay. Continuing on. So animistic this and the next one, and people get a little bit confused about these when we're looking at it. So when we're looking at this, a lot of mate choice stuff, a lot of territory stuff, but the big thing is that, this right here, is that there's usually no harm done with these behaviors. Compared to other ones where we saw those bucks fighting, and we know that they can like fight to death and they can get their antlers caught. Like usually no harm is done with these agonistic behaviors in order to get a mate. It's like, fine, I don't wanna do this anymore, you can have her, kind of thing. But when we're looking at this, we also have dominance or hierarchy, and that's going with a ranking or putting into a group. Ranking can get very aggressive. Ranking can actually push individuals out. You've probably seen like old male lions that eventually they're gonna die by themselves because they get pushed out by these social behaviors or this dominance hierarchy because someone else is taking over. Chrissy's like, that's really sad. It is kind of sad. But those can get a little aggressive. Everybody wants to be the top dog, right? Okay, continuing on, social behaviors, we have cooperation. Cooperation, obviously exactly what it means. We have a main goal in mind. We are going to work together in order to, a lot of the time, get food, right? So we're talking about pack hunting. This is a bunch of pelicans that are swarming together to trap a school of fish in order to eat. We're cooperating together to get something that we need. Okay, this is one of my favorites. So altruism or altruistic behaviors. You would definitely want to know examples of these, and we'll see multiple examples of these. So when we're seeing this is that it's like the individual is gonna put itself out there in order to save the family. So it decreases individual fitness, but increases species fitness. So one thing is about the ground squirrel is that they go out, they hang out, and they do their thing, and if one of them sees a predator, like some type of bird in the sky, it is going to get up, it is going to call, so it attracts that predator to that ground squirrel as all the rest of them run to hiding, right? So it's putting this one out on the line, like, I will die for my brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, and uncles, but at least that's my genetics, right? What is the meaning of life? Passing on genetics. And that's what altruism really, when we're talking about this, is all about, is making sure that the family genes are staying in rotation. Maybe it's not specifically mine, but my families are gonna continue on. It wouldn't be me, sorry guys, it would be male, because males are the ones that are usually gonna put themselves on the line in order to save everybody else. Because we know we need reproductive females in order to continue genetics as well, right? We don't really need males. Just kidding, we need males. Okay, now when we talk about this, this also goes to colonial mammals, talking about keeping specific genes. So that's when we're looking at, there is a queen of some sort, and then it's almost like, selective breeding without people doing this. It's the animals themselves, because they have the breeding males, they have the queen, and then they have the ones that they're like, you're not gonna breed, you're gonna be the worker ones, right? Because it's all about the keeping those very specific genetics within the population. So that is looking at bees, ants, also these things, which are really cute. And we're talking about naked mole rats, and that's what they have a queen. They live underground, and they keep their colony alive. So so what is this all called? You need to know this term, inclusive fitness. And it's talking about colonial animals, all about relatives, family genetics, all that kind of stuff, staying within those populations of animals. That's what we're looking at, inclusive fitness, okay? Does that make sense? Great. Okay, so then I think last thing is that we have this, just because it's an interesting thing to talk about, and people do this, hopefully, but we have reciprocal altruism. And this is looking at unrelated individuals really helping each other out, okay? And we've seen it like, have you ever helped a stranger before? Yes. No. Yeah, great, yes, we have, right? Most people are like, hey, can you tell me where this is? Sure, you go down this way and you go here. Like, that's helping someone out, right? Directions. When we're looking at reciprocal altruism, you've hopefully helped out a friend, right? But if you help out a friend and you're in a situation where you need help and they're like, nah, not gonna help you out, do you really like that friend very much after that? No, not really. And so we get to this tit for tat, and that's an actual thing that we're looking at, okay? Is that when I help you out, I expect that if I am in a situation where I need help, you're gonna help me out too. It's a tit for tat, okay? Other species of animals have this exact same thing. And so you've seen the cute animal couples where we're looking at this animal is hanging out with a different species of animal and it raised it since baby, yeah? Same thing, reciprocal altruism, we're helping each other out, but they're helping this thing out knowing that if it comes to a situation where they need its help, it's better help them out, or it's kind of like, we're done. And people are the same way. If you want to read more, I mean, I think there's specific examples of something like a bear and a wolf relationship, and the wolves raise a tiny little bear, and then the bear now helps protect the wolves or something like that. But it's a tit for tat. It is a, we're helping you out, I'm helping you out. You have to repay that, or else our relationship is done. Do you have any questions? Did you think of a good example, Addie? Is that
That's literally a part of dinosaur training, because they're all different types of dinosaurs, and they're all like a little family.
Because they raised the little T-Rex.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, we just
I used to watch Dinosaur Training. I used to know that song.
She's like, that's the plot of dinosaur training.
Okay, great. I mean, see, and it teaches us at a very little age that this is what we should be doing. Pretty sure. Okay. That's it. That's the end of animal behavior. So we have animal form and function and animal behavior. Ooh, you have tests coming up. So, yep, study guide, online review, and I do believe I have a code that we can go through.
What's it
as
called?
well.
Wednesday.
I might be lying about that, but I'm not sure. What? Test is on Wednesday. Yeah. Was it not posted yet? I will put it up right now. Okay, does anybody have, do you guys wanna, yeah, talk about the introduction as well? Okay, let me open this up, and then I will, talk about the introduction.
I'm used to it.
Yeah, not in a folder. Throw in.
I don't know. Because you're you know, shit, man. Half an hour, just don't work until 1 o'clock.
What are you doing? You don't need that. I'm not in mine.
Ooh, it looks like I have a practice quiz. You want that? I got this. Okay, online review. let's talk about that introduction a little bit. Now, you have your formal lab report posted on Schoology. That is where you want to go. And we know you have that sheet of paper in your journal of the things that I'm grading every single journal. For your own specifically, you need your question, both hypotheses, materials, procedure, data table, graph, all the time, right? Underneath that, you need to correspond to someone's in here of, oh, hey, Nora was testing temperature and that correlates, temperature, that can correlate to mine by blah, 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 blah. She found these findings and that goes to my findings, which were blah, 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 okay? But when we're looking at this, when we're seeing an introduction, what we're looking for is background information and a brief statement concerning the reason behind, and we're not doing the wet dry lab, we're looking at your experiment itself. So you have to probably do a little research, and when we're looking at that research, it's like, hey, this happens with isopods, and that's why we're asking the question, do they like the heavy beats or do they like light beats? Vibrations. Or do they like more of an acidic environment versus a basic or whatever it is, okay? So for the introduction, you're just kind of introducing maybe something about isopods and then correlating to that to what your experiment is about. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So now we have some time left. You could start looking and studying for your stuff. You could ask me questions about your lab. And we'll do a Kahoot tomorrow. Sure. Okay. Test on Wednesday.